All right, so now let's set it up. I'm going to navigate to register. First, we want to grab those imports. And you know what? Let me just speed this up a little bit. Like I said, I'm going to take them from the README because I really don't see the point of typing them out together. So we get use state, use effect. So eventually we'll use this use effect to navigate away from the page. For now, it's just going to be sitting there. Use state because we want to set up those state values. Logo, since we'll display it here, and of course wrapper for the styles. Then let's set up that initial state, which is going to be name, email, password, and is member. So let's say initial state is equal to, and then name, and let's start with empty string, email, same deal. Then we have also a password, same stuff, and of course we have is member. And again, this is really up to you. In my case, I'm gonna say that is member by default is true. If you want to display all of them, of course, that is really up to you. Then in the register, let's set up the state value as well as the function. So we want to go here with const, and we're looking for values. At least that's the name that I'm going to give. We'll say set values, and that is equal to use state, and let's pass in that initial state. After that, let's set up those placeholders. So handle change and on submit. And for the time being, I just want to see the event since we'll use those values a little bit later. I'll call this handle change. And if you remember, we needed to do this because we're setting up the controlled input. So every time we'll type something, we'll also affect the state value. So in here, let's say log, and we're going to go with event dot target. Okay, so let's copy this and set it up as on submit, or you can call this handle submit. That's really up to you. I'm going to go with on and submit. Still listening for event, but since this is a form, then I want to prevent the default right from the get-go. So say prevent default, and we'll invoke it. Still logging the target. Now, as far as the return, let's start by setting up the wrapper. And this is the case where I'm going to switch to our actual project. And let me navigate to the register page. So for time being, we only see this text on the screen. And let's set up our wrapper first. Then inside of the wrapper, and as I said, I actually need to add a class here, a full page. And then in here, let's set up that form. So we're going to go here with form. Now there's going to be no action since we'll handle that ourselves. But we do want to add a class of form. And also let's go right away with on submit. And we'll set it equal to our on submit function. Basically our placeholder. So on submit equals to on submit. And we should see something already on the screen. That is our form. Then let's set up that logo component. And then in here, let's go with heading 3, and let's just say login. Now, eventually, again, we'll toggle this one using the is member. So there's going to be a function that actually handles this one. So flip it from true to false and all that. There's also going to be a button. And then based on this value, we'll either say register or login. And you can see that if you take a look at the complete project. So for now, let's just hard code as login. Then let's keep on moving and let's set up that form row. So this is going to be eventually a component where we set up the label as well as the input. But for now, let's just hard code that. So in here, I'm going to say name field, and we want to start with div. This is again a global class. So we're going to go here with form row. Then we want to set up a label. As far as HTML4, now we will hard code this for now, name again. In a second, in the following video, all of this is going to be dynamic. So let's add here a form label class. Inside of the label, let's just say name. Let's save that, okay. That's the value for our label. Now let's set up that input. So in here, type text, yep, that sounds about right. And also name equals to name. And we also want to go with the value and on change. So those are the two things that we need if we want to set up the controlled input. We need value and we need a on change. Now, as far as the value, we're going to go here with the values and dot name. Why? Well, because we have an object. and we're looking for the name property. And when it comes to onChange, we'll pass in our handle change, so our placeholder function. So let's say here handle change. And lastly, we want to add a little bit of styling. So let's say here class name and form input. Now there's tiny, of course, handle change like so. And what else? Well, let's also set up that button. So this is going to be a submit button. So type submit, and let's add some classes. Let's say btn block. And as far as the text, let's just say submit. Once we save, this is what we should see on the screen. And what's also interesting, that as we're typing or submitting the form in a console, we will see a event. And don't worry about this warning. Essentially, it just says that we're using React 17. What we're more interested is the value that we get in the log. So here I'm looking for the input. So the moment I'll type something here, I should get back the input. And from there, we'll get the name of the input as well as the value, which will allow us to set up the state value. And when it comes to onSubmit, this is going to return a form. So eventually, we will do more logic. For now, I just want to see whether I'm getting the entire form as a event target. So let's try it out. I'll type something here. Notice I'm getting the input. Like I said, eventually we'll use some values from here. And the same if I click on onSubmit. Now I'm getting the form. So it looks like everything is correct. And we can proceed to the next step.